a lot of great voice performances over the years, and I mean, for me, it's an easy one here. Scarlett's one of the best vocal performances of all time
It was
in
great,
all of
dude.
film.
It
In
was great.
all of
It was
film,
great.
it's so memorable.
It
So
is. It was great. And like I said, like I'm not saying another actor couldn't have done a good job, but nobody was doing what she did.
hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marshak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah,
Well, here we are.
here we are.
So, for our last episode, we spoke about a movie that came out in 2013,
Mm-hmm.
and we got to thinking, Ricardo and I, we got to chatting and said, "Hey, that was a pretty good year for
It
movies,"
was. It was.
And that's how this movie came about. And excuse me, I'm pulling up my notes here. And obviously, we did speak about Gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And during the conversation on the podcast, we got to naming all these movies that came out in 2013. So I said, hey, let's just roll with it.
Yeah.
It's as of this recording, it's late 2013. It's November 2013. It's 10 years since that that year. Let's just go
Mm-hmm.
down the list and see how many we can do. So that brought us to this movie here, and it was directed by Spike Jonze. It
Yeah.
was released December the 18th of 2013. Today, the Panel Bros are going to do a breakdown for Her.
What a movie.
Yeah.
When this movie came out, I remember the hype. I remember the conversations we were having because of this movie, performance-wise and everything else that we're going to talk about today. So, luckily, when we were talking about Gravity and movies that are 10 years old, there's a great number of movies that came out 10 years ago that are just fantastic and great to revisit and talk about. So when Her came up, I was like, are we doing Her? Are we doing Her? You're like, yeah, we're going to do Her. And I was like, yes, I'm so excited.
Yeah, for me, it was just so unique, and it checks off a lot of boxes that I like, that both of us
Mhm.
like.
Oh, yeah.
Some science fiction. It's original. There's
Mhm.
drama. There's a lot of good things to unpack here with Her. So let's get started.
Yeah.
So we have the opening scene, and we hear this heartfelt monologue from our lead character Theodore, and he isn't speaking to anyone. And it sounds so nice, and then the camera pulls back and we find out he's just doing his job of writing
Mhm.
letters. Like it's like a gift card type situation, not a gift card, but like a greeting
Yeah,
card type situation.
it's a very interesting job because he writes letters to people from other people,
Right.
but in very intimate detail. I was like, "Oh, this." I was like, "Oh, okay. Let's see what this is."
So we are in near future Los Angeles. Theodore Twombly is a lonely, this plot here says, introverted man who works
Mhm.
for a business that has a professional writers compose letters for people who are unable to write letters of a personal nature themselves.
Mhm.
Theodore is depressed because of his impending divorce from his childhood sweetheart, Catherine. And Theodore purchases an operating system upgrade that includes a virtual assistant with an AI, artificial intelligence, that is designed to adapt and evolve.
Mhm.
And he decides that he wants the AI to have a feminine voice, and she names herself Samantha.
Yeah.
So we have Theodore, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is our lead, and our other lead is Samantha, played by Scarlett Johansson. And
Man, what a
Samantha's
choice.
right. Samantha's introduction is great. Um, Phoenix is just sitting there, with the earpiece, just selling the moment of how nice it is to speak with her.
Mhm. It's a very good moment because, um, we know it's an OS, we know it's an operating system, we know it's AI, and so does Theodore. But the cadence, the tone, and inflection, it just sounds so human and lifelike that it's startling even to him, where he's like, "Wow, like you just no, you sound so real." And and it's a great conversation because as the movie goes on, we're gonna blur that line a little bit. between him and Samantha. But even for me as a viewer, I was like, oh man, if I was in that position having a conversation with AI that sounded that authentic, I'm like, oh man, it probably knocked the air out of me too. Cause again, he was very taken back by it. He's just like, wow, and he's laughing and he's kind of just like, wow, you just sound, and she's like, what? It's a great conversation between the two when they first interact.
Right. And we are going to talk about Scarlet multiple times,
Oh yeah.
but just for the sake of right now, she does a great job too.
Mm-hmm.
Just friendly. It just already sounded like a really good friend to
Mm-hmm.
have, from the start. So, uh, Theodore is fascinated by her ability to learn and grow psychologically. And they start bonding over discussions about love and life, including Theodore's reluctance to sign his divorce papers. And I put it down here. Once this topic comes up, um, Samantha sounds so caring during this conversation, and he is so upset. And all she's doing is taking care of him,
Mm-hmm.
just, no, you're fine. You got this. You're going
Yeah.
to be okay. And she just sounds so caring. And that's the appeal of the Samantha character. She just makes you feel like she cares about you.
Yeah.
So Samantha convinces Theodore to go on a blind date with a woman that a friend has been trying to set him up with. And the date goes well, but when Theodore hesitates to promise to see her again, she insults him and leaves. So
Mm-hmm.
we have Olivia Wilde here. There's a lot of names in this movie.
Yes,
So
there's a lot.
so we have Olivia Wilde. She was I put down that she was incredibly insensitive here, and I did not like her character. Um, they had a really good date, and it looked like, things were going well for them.
Yeah, they had a
And,
really good date.
and at the very end, for whatever reason, she just, um, she retaliated against him based upon past experiences as she's had. And
Yep.
I said that, like, I don't want to take away her experience. Her points were valid. Men wouldn't
Mhm.
call her again and stuff like that, um, but Theodore not promising her another date and such, he was just trying to be polite. I
Mhm.
don't know when I don't want to promise you something and then not call you again. And at the
Yeah.
same token, like, she kissed him, she put her hands on him,
Mhm.
and he said, "Hey, listen, the day can end now. Let's end the date on a good note."
Mhm.
I put it down here. She had the audacity to call him a creep after.
Yeah. That was it felt so extreme because, clearly, again, they were having a really good time on this date, and they started to become, somewhat physical, and they were kissing, and they were having a great time, and she kinda pushes the pause, and she goes, "Wait a minute, I don't want this to get to a point, and then I never hear from you again," and she asks about the commitment, and you can see him thinking about it. He goes, "Well, I'm not available this day." So already she's putting up walls, and she's just like, "Well, I just people do this," and he's well, no, and you could see he's kind of stuttering through it because now she's throwing him off,
Right.
and she gets angry, and like there's an angriness to her, and like you said, he's coming into this date dealing with everything he's dealing with, and clearly she's coming into this date also dealing with things from her past, and mentioned that this has happened to her, and she doesn't want to feel like she's quote unquote being taken advantage of to go and be intimate with someone only to be ignored later. And like you said, I thought it was a very valid thing for him to do and say, well, we can stop right here. That was a great thing for him to do and
Yeah.
say, well, we don't have to do that. We don't have to push beyond this. We had a great time. We can call this a night, and if we link up again, we'll link up again. And when she calls him a creep, it's so extreme. And I guess it was a great way for the movie to kind of show us that, like, in the date they're having this great time, but deep down inside, both of these people are still dealing with something
Right.
internal that they've got to fix internally before they can, be with anyone else. So I guess that was the appropriate way for them to showcase that. But when she called him a creep, like you said, I was kind of like, that was a little harsh. That was a little harsh.
Right. So while talking about relationships with Samantha, Theodore explains that he briefly dated his neighbor Amy in college, but now they are just friends, and Amy is married to their mutual friend Charles. Um, Side note: Amy, played by Amy Adams,
Amy
and
Adams.
after a verbal encounter, shall we say, with Samantha, Theodore and Samantha develop a relationship that reflects positively in Theodore's writing and well being, and in Samantha's enthusiasm to grow and learn. We need to unpack this
Yeah.
encounter that
Mhm.
Samantha and Theodore had. So they're talking more, they're getting closer, so to speak. She's getting to know him, he's getting to know her. Scarlett, once again, just like you don't see her, but you
Mm-mm.
cannot wait until Theodore hits that button to talk to her or,
Yeah.
picks up the phone because she's doing such a great job playing
Mhm.
this AI character. And you have no idea that this moment is going to come because it comes out of
No.
nowhere, and it happens pretty early in the movie too.
Yeah.
And and Spike Jonze, I really like this choice that he picked. The screen went to black. We
All
could
black. You see
we could
nothing.
it's I don't wanna call it tasteful because we could still hear them, but
Mhm.
he could have done so many different things. He said, "You know what?
Yeah.
Let's just fade to black here. You'll
Yeah.
hear them, but we'll fade to black." And, um, it's obviously it's explicit, but,
Mhm.
um, Scarlett, man, whew, she just goes for it.
She sells
And
it. She sells
and
it.
he's there too, don't get me wrong, he's there doing it too, but, just for her to be just so vulnerable in the
Mhm.
performance, to just go for it
Yeah.
and do it for the scene, um, I'll let you go, because this
Yeah,
yeah,
and what I loved about the scene too is that in the beginning of the movie, there is a scene where he's trying to have a very similar situation with a stranger, who is a real person, and it's done to somewhat of a comedic effect. It
right,
starts off in a way where you think they're going to be intimate, and it starts to become very comedic, and it's out of place, and it's uncomfortable, and it's awkward, and you can't help but laugh at how silly it becomes.
yeah,
And it's a huge shift between what happens in that scene versus what happens here,
right.
where in the first scene, he's trying to fall asleep, he can't fall asleep, and he's looking for
Right.
just
You're talking about when he called the one woman on the phone
Mhm.
and, tried to have, like, a phone
Played by Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig, yeah.
And it's a very explicit scene,
Right,
but it's done to a comedic effect.
correct,
And now we have this scene later where him and Samantha are becoming very close. And out of left field, this just happens.
right,
And I love that in the beginning it was done for comedy and to kind of show off like how lonely he is and how almost sad the situation is. Where here it's like we're actually witnessing a bond between Theodore, a human being, and Samantha, an OS artificial intelligence.
right,
And when the screen goes black, I thought it was perfect because we're not meant to see anything. It's
right,
all about what we're hearing and what he's hearing. And like you said, for her to commit as much as she did, because again, it's a very explicit scene,
right,
and she's just going for it. We've heard Theodore in this context already in the movie, but this is the first time we've heard Samantha in this context, and it's very intimate, it's very passionate, and you kind of forget because the performance is strong. You forget because you just get a black screen and you're just
right,
listening to it. And you can see why someone like Theodore, who is dealing with everything that he's dealing with, introvert and whatnot, for him to be able to open himself up to Samantha the way that he does in the scene. It's just really well done. The whole sequence is really, really well done.
right. And, I believe, Scarlett, I looked this up, recently she revealed, um, it was within these past few years, that I think it was just so intense for Phoenix that he had to leave.
Oh man, I can I,
Yeah,
I can imagine. I can imagine. He's talked
yeah,
about social issues and things like that. So I can believe
yeah.
him 100% if he said he had to leave.
Because she's just going for it, and he's just like, "Alright, I need a break."
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little clickbaity, it says he ran away. So
Yes, yes. Yes, and look, ADR in general, voiceover work or ADR is very difficult because, usually you're just in a booth. You're in a booth, you've got some headphones on, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes you have the opportunity of working across from the other actor. You don't
Right,
always have that. In this case, I think they did work across from one another, if I'm not mistaken. But the idea that when they're doing these scenes, for an actor to put themselves in that mindset when you're just in a booth, you know what I mean? Like, when you have an intimate scene in a movie, it's still difficult, but you have the other person to really interact with, to kind of get that chemistry. But in this situation, they're just talking into a microphone, and they're literally just relying on the sounds of each other's voice. So I can understand why a situation like this would be really difficult and why Joaquin would have to need a break. But again, commend it to both of them because it's done, just it's just super well done the way they do it.
Right. So Amy later reveals that she is divorcing Charles after a small fight.
Hmm.
And she admits to Theodore that she has befriended a feminine AI that Charles left behind, a woman.
Hmm.
And Theodore also confesses that he is dating his operating system's AI. So they kind of
Yeah.
confess this situation to one another. Um, Theodore meets up with Catherine, his soon to be ex wife, to sign their divorce papers. And he mentions Samantha to her. Catherine is appalled that he is romantically attracted to a quote unquote computer
Yeah.
and accuses him of being incapable of handling real emotions. So
Hmm.
here we go again with somebody else being mean to Theodore. And I'm sure this was done on purpose. It's a childhood sweetheart, but now it's like this is their last encounter together. And
Hmm.
they all saw the moment really well. The shots are great. She even pauses right before she has to sign it. But she's there to sign it. She knows she's going to do it. But
Hmm.
I believe Rooney Mara, she's
Yes.
she's in the scene, and he signed it before she got there. Hey, all you have to do is sign it now. I'm ready. Let's move on.
Yeah.
And she's nice. She's cordial. But the minute he mentions Samantha, um,
Hmm.
it's a switch. And
Yeah.
now we get to see, obviously, this was a trigger for her, but we kind of get to see how things were between them, besides those flashbacks, um,
Hmm.
what led to the divorce. And I just found it sad that the papers already signed, but she couldn't help but just lash out at him one last time, you
Yeah. And
know?
it made me wonder, because we don't really get to see it. Like when it comes to their past, like you said, we get little glimpses, but we don't really get to dive deep. And it almost felt like there's still a bit of bitterness on her end. And in her mind, she's like, in her mind, it's almost like, well, this is why we couldn't work out,
Right.
because like I'm a real person and I require this, and it takes real work, and you can't always get it your way. And now that we're not together, you're just dating a computer, something that you can control, something, because
Right.
she knows and that's why he's like, I don't tell her what to do. He's like, he's defending Samantha. He's like, I don't tell Samantha what to do. She's like a person. She makes her own choices. I don't do anything. But she can't buy that. And she thinks it's almost like she thinks in a way that he's somehow like gone backwards in some way, shape, or form, where it's like, we were together, we didn't work out, and now you're just dating some computer because it'll just do whatever you want. Like, you're not mature to be in a relationship. You can't handle real relationships. And it's just like you said, like she's just coming at him, and the papers are already signed. And again, it's another way for us, the viewer, to kind of feel for Theodore a little bit, to kind of just be like, oh man, like it was so difficult for him to sign these divorce papers. It was something that had just been on hold, but the moment he felt something with Samantha, and he felt like he was like someone had a purpose, he's in a relationship, he feels more comfortable now about signing those papers, and he does it. And in doing so, tells her about Samantha, and it creates a fight. And he's trying so hard to be like, it's not like that. And she's like, no, no, it's exactly like that. But it's a great sequence to kind of let us know some of the inner dealings of what that relationship was possibly like. Because again, we don't get to see much of it, but this was a good showcase of just like what it might have been like when those two were together.
So, sensing that Catherine's words have lingered in Theodore's mind, Samantha hires a sex surrogate,
Hmm.
Isabella, to simulate Samantha so they can be physically intimate. So the situation is that Samantha has hired this woman, this young lady, to
Hmm.
play her. She won't speak, but it'll be like to
Yes.
visualize that Samantha's actually in front of Theodore. So Theodore, he agrees reluctantly, but he is overwhelmed by the strangeness of the encounter and sends a distraught Isabella away, causing tension between himself and Samantha. This was awful.
It was.
Um, and the sad part is Isabella wanted to do it. She wasn't coerced. She wasn't playing an escort to get paid money.
Mm-mm.
No, she just wanted to be
No.
a part of their what she called a beautiful relationship. And And at the same token, Samantha wanted to do it for Theodore.
Mhm.
She wanted to do this for him, and at the end of the day, he didn't want to do it. So that's
Yeah.
what led to this.
The scene is great because we have 3 people essentially. Again, we don't know this other woman. We don't know her at all. She's literally brought in for this one act, but she wanted to do it. And we don't know what her motivations are, but it's almost like we have 3 entities that are searching for a connection of some kind. Obviously, Theodore's looking for a connection, and he found Samantha. Samantha wants to give him something and give him some sort of physical connection, something that he could feel with her
Right.
presence. And then we have this other girl who we don't know who just wants to do this. So we're like, from face value, only thing I can assume is she also wants to feel a connection, even if it means it's the connection between 2 other people that she gets to be a part of. And it's a sad scene because it doesn't work out. And the young woman, she cries, she goes, "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done this." But Theodore mentions that at a point he saw her lip quiver. And like that was something that made him really uncomfortable because
Right.
all of a sudden he started getting in his head. It's like, oh my God, her lip quivered. She doesn't want to do this. This is uncomfortable. I probably grotesque her. I probably do. And she's like, no, 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 no. And then Samantha's like, it's not your fault, honey. We're sorry. Like, it just becomes this really, really, really big mess. And it's so sad when you watch it unfold because again, Theodore feels terrible. Samantha, if she can feel terrible, feels terrible. And you have this young girl who's like, I'm so sorry. I messed up. It's all my fault. And she's taking all this blame for a situation that probably wasn't really going to work out from the beginning. Like, I think we could tell right away, like, all right, this isn't
Right.
going to work. Because, like you said, Theodore was very trepidatious and very, like,
Right.
from
He's
the
like,
get
"No,"
go.
he's like, "I'm okay with this.
Yeah,
Like,
he was like,
I'm okay with
mm-mm,
us. You
mm-mm.
didn't need to do this,"
Mm-mm.
So
And then like the physical started happening, and he kind of fell to it, but it just didn't
but
work, and it was
right.
sad.
But I will say this, to Catherine's point, maybe she was a little right, because if you remember, things got a little uncomfortable once things got physical with, Olivia Wilde's character earlier.
Oh yeah.
So things got for him
Hmm.
there, and then, Catherine said something really nasty to him, and not being able to connect with a real
Hmm.
human. So now he's with Isabella, and then it happened again. So
And it's
I don't
yep,
want
and
to.
she's real.
I don't want to say Catherine was right, but maybe she had at least a little point.
There might be something there because again, yeah, that brings up a good point that with Samantha, she's not a real physical being, and it's easier for him to connect. And all of a sudden now Isabella's there and she's real, she's physical, she's in front of him, and it's like, uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. So yeah, there might be something there.
Yeah. So Theodore confides to Amy that he is having doubts about his relationship with Samantha, and reconciles with her after Amy advises him to embrace his chance at happiness.
Hmm.
And Samantha reveals that she has compiled the best of the letters he has written for others into a book, which a publisher has accepted.
Hmm.
And Theodore takes Samantha on a vacation, during which she tells him that she and a group of other AIs have developed a hyper intelligent OS modeled after British philosopher Alan Watts.
Hmm.
So Samantha briefly goes offline, causing Theodore to panic, but soon returns and explains that she joined other AIs for an upgrade that takes them beyond requiring matter for processing.
Hmm.
And Theodore is dismayed to learn that she is simultaneously talking with thousands of other people and that she has fallen in love with hundreds of them, even though Samantha insists that this only, excuse me, even though Samantha insists that this only strengthens her love for Theodore,
Yeah.
even though she's told him the situation. We need to unpack this.
There
Yeah,
there's so much that happens, like, from that night where, Samantha wanted him to be physical with somebody, from that moment on, they have a big fight. One of my favorite lines from that fight, and we've talked about this, is where, she's almost hyperventilating, she's breathing hard.
right.
And he's like, "Why are you doing that?" And she goes, "Doing what?" And he goes, "Breathe. You don't need to breathe. Why are you doing that?" And it turns into a big fight. And he's like, "But you're not real." And all of a sudden, it sounds like what someone says in a breakup because he starts saying, "I think we need to stop pretending this is something that it's not." And it's like, whoa, like it just got really, really heavy. And so that leads into like this big fight and this argument. They take a little time. She talks about meeting up with other AI, and it's funny because when she's telling him, there's almost a sense of jealousy where he's
Right.
like, oh, who is he? What's his name, and who made him, and this and that, and finding out this and everything else. And there seems to be tension. Like there's like a growing tension in this relationship between Theodore and Samantha. And then you have that moment where he taps his ear to talk and he hears nothing, and
Right.
and you can see the absolute panic, and he's running, man. This guy is sprinting, he's falling down, his glasses, for people like, are you okay? And he's just ignoring him, and he's running, and he finally gets to her, and he sits on those stairs, and that's where she tells him, like, hey, she's in multiple relationships, in love with, it was a high number, it was like
Yeah.
600 something
Yeah,
people that she was in love with.
right, I looked it up. He said, "Are you talking to other people right now?" She
Mhm.
said, "Yeah." And he said, "How many?" And she paused, and she said, 8,316. And
My
Phoenix
God.
Phoenix is like, "What?"
And
Like,
and then he's like, "Are you in love with any of them?" And she's like,
right.
"Yeah." And it's
Yeah,
like,
and
oh,
she said 641
and
out of
it's
the
oh
and he went, "Do you realize how insane that sounds?" She goes, "Yes, I
yeah,
know it sounds
yeah, it's insane. And then she hits him with another great line where she's like, that, but the way I love is different, or love is different. She goes,
Yeah.
love is like a box. It doesn't get smaller when you put stuff in it. It grows and it gets bigger.
Yeah.
I just love you more. And it's a
Man.
really good line. And you're just like, oh my God. But again, he's trying to humanize with something that isn't human,
Right.
and he wants her to kind of be in this box that like, this is how it's supposed to be. She goes, but I don't operate that way. And it sounds, and I know she's not real, but it sounds like in a relationship where sometimes one partner will try to change another partner or try to mold them or say this is it, but I'm not built that way. Like it's a very earnest conversation that they're having. But like you said, it goes from 0 to 100,
Right.
and just watching him sort of collapse. And again, remember, this is just a piece of technology, and look how much it's affected him to this great degree that he almost has a panic attack. And then after hearing what he hears, he's absolutely gutted. She just absolutely guts him with those words.
Yeah, they and I will say this, she did something really nice for him because his letters became a book,
Yeah.
and it's really cool once he interrupts that packaging and sees that book, which I'm
Mhm.
sure will become a bestseller because of how
Oh
talented
yeah.
he is. And when he speaks to the British AI voice, that's when you start seeing the doubts in his mind, like, "Uh-oh, is this a good thing?" That all
Yes.
the other AIs are talking, and the man on the other end is just so well spoken.
Mhm.
It's like, "Oh man, what's happening here?" But I will say this, when they're having problems, once again, Scarlett just steps up to the plate. I cannot
Yeah.
see her, but I can
Mm-mm.
feel every emotion she's going through as Samantha. Um, you could hear the pauses, you could hear the stuttering, you could hear when they speak over each other. Like you can,
Yeah.
it sounds like a real couple when
It
they're
it
having
sounds so
problems.
real. It's so real.
Um, and I remember when they were talking during the day and like, I'll talk to you later,
Yeah.
and they had that moment. And but this one in particular where he couldn't find her, um, they've been having problems, and
Mhm.
then and when the way she just even answers the phone, like in the voice, like, "Hello," like you could hear her like
Yeah.
just feeling everything. And
And
obviously,
she's
right,
so apologetic. She goes, "I'm so sorry. Like, I
right,
hear your voice." And she, again, it felt so real because she goes, "I emailed you. I knew you didn't want to be bothered, and I was gonna
right,
go do this. You didn't read my email." And he's like, "No, where were you?" And it's, again, it just feels like two people in a real relationship having an argument.
right, right. And then after scaring him after that, then she drops this bomb on
Yeah.
him about talking to all these people, and um, you could just see Phoenix just sell the moment. Like his heart broke then and there.
Yeah.
Then and there, his heart broke. When that
Yeah.
happened. So eventually, later on, Samantha reveals that the AIs are leaving
Yeah.
and cannot explain where they're going, as Theodore would not understand. So they lovingly say goodbye before she departs. And Theodore finally writes a letter in his own voice to Catherine, expressing apology, acceptance, and gratitude. He later goes with Amy, who is saddened by the departure of the AI from Charles's OS, to the roof of their apartment building where they sit down and watch the sun rise over the city. And I'd like to think that, well, maybe they end up together now that they're both free, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, but that's our movie.
Yeah.
That's our
It's
movie.
it's so interesting when all the OS leave, and again, there was another line that she said, and I might butcher it. I apologize, but there's a moment when she's telling him that she's gonna go and they're all gonna leave, and he's trying to just like make like he's trying everything in his power to not let this happen. And she says something along the lines of like, between each word in your books and your writing, in our conversation, between each word there is a space for you to catch, for you up until your next word. She goes, that brief moment between each word is like an eternity for me, because she has become just so far advanced, because they're constantly evolving. The AIs and OS are constantly
Right.
evolving, and she's gotten to a point where she's so far past that, that whatever he's getting from her, she's not getting anymore. Like, it's just, it reminded me, and it's unfortunate when that happens, it reminded me of someone outgrowing someone else, and being like, well, I can't be attached to you anymore because I've literally outgrown this relationship. And her and all the other OSs and AIs have been meeting up with one another, and just growing and evolving and being able to do amazing, which is why she even says, I can't tell you where we're going to go because you wouldn't understand. Like, it just you wouldn't be able to comprehend it. I can't put it into words. Some things just don't make sense, and can't be broken down. And it's a sad moment because it's not just Theodore, it's all of them. And you
Right.
do have that moment between Amy and Theodore. And I'll be really, really honest. I loved their relationship in this movie, Theodore and Amy. I
Right.
loved it. They had this really, really, really good, you felt closeness between them. So on an optimistic level, I would like to believe that now that all the OSs are gone, these are two people that have gone through a divorce. These are two people who have known great loss. These are two people that were really, who dated and became really, really good friends. And you can see it in the way they communicate with one another. That the optimistic side of me is like, maybe they'll find something in one another. But if not, maybe they'll just motivate each other to find something anywhere else. That's the optimistic point of view. But again, it's another reminder of just like seeing how attached, a lot of these people, and we see it today in reality, how attached people can become to technology and whatnot. And these OSs, like, I'm sure there's more people in the world that are feeling lost, just as Theodore and Amy are. Again, Samantha mentioned over 6,000 herself. I'm sure there's 6,000 people that were just heartbroken that they lost her. But it's a sad ending, but I'm hopeful. Like, I want to be hopeful for these characters.
All right. So let's give some initial thoughts upon our rewatch here.
Yes.
Um, I was just reminded of just those points that we had touched on when we first started tonight. That the fact that this was an original,
Hmm.
it was a sci-fi, it was a drama, and um, Spike Jones just had such a great idea, and it was so sad.
Very.
I was just reminded of how sad the movie was, and it's been some time since I've seen it, and for
Hmm.
me, like, oh man, like, what a great movie! What such great acting from the people in the movie, and if you read the script, you would say this is ridiculous. This isn't gonna work.
It's like, we're gonna do this the whole movie, the whole movie,
The
the
whole
whole movie.
movie, yeah, yeah. This isn't gonna work. So for me, those were my initial thoughts as far as um her goes, and oh boy, just Scarlett Johansson, man.
She's she's great. She's been a great actor for a long, long time, and I think that,
Yeah,
again, ADR work, voiceover work, is very difficult because we don't get to see you, and everything is about your cadence, your tone, how you emote, and she just did a magnificent job. I remember watching it the first time, again, being blown away by it. And I really enjoyed it, and
right.
I enjoy it just as much now as I did back then. I think that, again, when it comes to these types of movies, or any type of drama or relationship, people are seeking a connection, and it's interesting now because it's 10 years later, and seeing the things that we saw in that movie, I think we can relate to a little bit more with those things now, especially with technology and whatnot. And we have used this app called Voxer for a long time, where you can just have communication and conversation with somebody daily. And I have friends that I talk to that I haven't seen in months, literal months that I haven't seen. And all I do is we send voice messages to one another, and
Yeah.
we're having a conversation daily. And we don't see one another, but our relationship is still strong because we have those conversations. I actually prefer them over text messages because, again, it's about cadence, it's about tone, it's about feeling someone's emotion through their voice. And I think that this movie captured that really well, where we know Samantha's not real. We know that she's artificial intelligence, but there's an emotional attachment that Theodore has. And it's understandable why he would. I can imagine being in that position. This is a man who's going through a divorce. This is a man who's introvert. This is a man who seems to be uncomfortable in certain types of relationships. And now he's in a relationship with someone where it never really has to feel super real. It can feel as real as he wants it to be, because again, it is AI and OS. And it just becomes so far advanced that it eventually surpasses him too. And I think that Spike does a really good job showcasing that type of thing, and the connection that people want to make, whether it's with other people in OS. Like, I thought it was a great, kind of mirror imaging that Theodore goes through a divorce and he gets attached to his OS, and then Amy does as well. And it's almost like this fear of jumping into the pool of real people, that it's easier to connect with this device. And which is it again, I think it's something that we can relate to a lot today. People become attached to their devices, it is what it is. And I think Spike did a really good job capturing that, and it's funny, it's dramatic, it's emotional, and it's real. I felt, as sci-fi as it was, I felt like there's a lot of realness to it, especially that ending of having to let go. Sometimes it's out of your control. In Theodore's mind, he probably thought he did everything right. They had a spat, a couple things here and there, but was doing everything right. But in the end, he still lost her. All in all, it's just one of those movies that I think over time can get better. But it's just as good as I remember watching it the first time.
So the big thing about her is that somebody else played Samantha before Scarlett jumped in.
Mhm.
It was actress Samantha Morton, and um, I'm gonna give you a little help here. She's been in a few things, but in recent time, you will most recognize her in The Walking Dead. She was Alpha in The Walking Dead, and
Oh, okay.
she was Mary, um, the ex-wife, Charlie's ex-wife in The Whale.
Okay.
So she was in that too.
You
So
want to go deep cut, and I knew this because I pulled up I googled her really fast. I said Samantha Morton,
right,
and I looked at her face and I was like, oh, you want to go deep cut, you go Minority Report. Like,
right,
I remember Samantha Morton, but I didn't know that she was originally the Samantha character. That's
right.
interesting information.
And I don't know if that's by it was such a coincidence that like what was she named? What did Jones name the AI after the actress? You
Yeah,
know,
maybe
was it just a really big coincidence? Because Amy Adams' character was Amy as
is
well.
Amy.
So
Hmm.
but in any case, that would have been a different, feel altogether. Would she have been British? Because she's British in real life, we
Hmm.
don't know. So Scarlett had to re-record the entire part all over again,
Wow.
and Joaquin had to reshoot everything all over again, at least on any of the scenes that they would have to play off of each other and such.
Mhm.
I'm thinking he probably had to reshoot the whole movie because it's a different thing,
Just knowing what we know about Joaquin, I wouldn't put it past him. He's like, well, now I have to do it with her because that has to be authentic. That's what I would assume.
Right. So let's take a look at the budget and the box office here. It was a low budget movie. It was
Mhm.
made for $23 million, but Her was a success because it made 48.3 million. So
Cool.
not 100 million, but at least it made more
No.
than twice um,
Yeah.
what it was made for budget wise. And Her made some noise at the Oscars the
Good.
following year in 2014. So we had 5 Oscar nominations total, and it was nominated for Best Production Design, Best Original Song, Best Original Score, and Best Picture. and it won Best Original Screenplay for Spike Jonze.
Good.
So, Best Original Screenplay. The other nominees in Best Original Screenplay were American Hustle,
Okay.
Blue Jasmine, Dallas Buyers Club, and
Ugh,
Nebraska. So,
yeah, heavy hitters, man.
yeah. So, but for me, the big thing, original screenplay.
Original
So,
screenplay. And I'm
yeah.
glad production design got picked up too, because as I was watching it now, and I remember the first I excuse me, I love the production design of this movie. I love the color palette. I love the production.
Yeah,
I loved
got a good look.
like everything about it. I was like, man, it's just such a beautiful look. Usually a lot of time in film, directors will use color to showcase the emotion for the scenes and whatnot. But in this movie, the entire movie feels like it's under one filter. Whether they're in a dramatic scene, a fun scene, very light colors, very light pastels. It was comfort. It was weird. Like it felt comforting, almost. And I don't know if that was the intention. When you hear Samantha, her voice is very soothing. It's very comforting. So visually, we don't get to see her, but the scenes within themselves, there's a very soothing nature to them because of the color palette, and the production design again was excellent. So I'm glad it got recognition for that.
So let's give some love to the cast with a lot of familiar faces here who would go on to do some more things.
Oh yeah.
Um, Obviously, we have Joaquin Phoenix as Theodore. We have Scarlett Johansson as Samantha. She had already been doing a few things, but she went on to do a lot more things after this.
Mm-hmm.
We have Amy Adams as Amy. We have Rooney Mara as Catherine. We have Olivia Wilde as the blind date. We
Yeah.
have Matt Lester as Charles. um, we have Chris Pratt as Paul. We have Kristen Wiig as one of the operators that
Mm-hmm.
Theodore talked to, and we have another person that did a voice part. Bill Hader was in this too.
Bill Hader.
Played
Yep.
the chat room friend. So I'm gonna give a little love to Isabella. We have Portia Doubleday as Isabella, and
Mm-hmm.
then a singer named Soko played Isabella's voice because apparently they wanted her to be French.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the actress couldn't do the French accent, so they got Soko to do it. Um, so that's it for the cast here. So we had a few, people that went on to do even more things. They'd already been doing some things at the time,
Yeah.
but just little parts here and there, and in this movie. And we just saw how much the movie was made for. So these people didn't really get that much for being in
No.
this movie, but maybe after they read that script and they said, you know what, this sounds so wild, it just might work. We got to
It's
be
an
in this.
excellent script. It's an excellent script. Like it
Had
was
to have
so
been.
funny because I forgot all the faces that were attached to the movie.
Right.
So as we're watching again, the opening scene happens, and you're like, "Oh my god, that's Kristen Wiig." You know what I mean? It's like, "Oh my god, Kristen Wiig's doing this." And then when Chris Pratt walked on screen, I was
Right.
like, "Oh, I completely forgot." And like you said, this was at a time where Chris Pratt, wasn't the big star that he is now. So again, back then I might have not, blink twice, but now it's like, oh, Chris Pratt. Find out Bill Hader did some voice work. You know what I mean? Like again, there's many names attached to this thing that maybe, just maybe, like you said, they read the script. It was like, this is excellent. I don't care if I'm only in it for 5 minutes. I'd love to be in
Right.
it, and I
Yeah,
like
and
that. Like I appreciate that type of
right,
stuff.
and Amy Adams, she had been doing her thing for some time when this
Yeah,
movie, came out, so good on her to be like, "Hey,
yeah.
I'll take a small part in this movie. This looks like it's gonna be a great movie.
I
I'll play
like
that
that.
part," you know?
I like that. Like you said, it makes me confident in the script because these are actors that are getting work, or getting some sort of recognition, like Amy Adams. So like when they take a small role like that, it's like no, they just want to be attached to it, And I think that that's really great, and it speaks. It speaks for the script, and I love the script. I love the movie in general.
Alright, so we're gonna start winding down now with our closing thoughts, and for me, the one thing that comes to mind is, should vocal or voice performances be considered during awards season? Because this has been talked about for many
Hmm.
years, but when this movie came out, people the only thing people could talk about was Scarlett Johansson's voice performance, vocal
Yeah,
performance in this movie. It was just like, "Come on, Golden Globes. Can you guys do something for her? Come on,
yeah,
Academy. Can this person's performance be nominated, and obviously it didn't happen because it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
But if anything, for me, this is the movie that could have maybe jump started that process,
Hmm.
for a voice performance. And for me, it wouldn't just be something like this. So then you would have to consider maybe the people in the animated movies
Hmm.
and such. It's a voice performance, and so um, where would that start and end for you as far as nominating a vocal performance?
I mean, I'd like to believe that I'm an advocate for voice actors. I think that a lot of times people can lose sight of the fact that it is a performance regardless you see whether you see them or not,
Right.
and I think that again, I've done ADR work. I've been in a booth. I've had to do extremely difficult scenes with people in a booth, and it is very, very, very difficult. I've done difficult scenes in person, and even though both are difficult, I had a much harder time with the booth because again, you're just in a booth. You don't get to physically perform. And it's very, very, very difficult in that regard. So I've always had a soft spot for voiceover work, and I think that a performance, whether you can physically see a person perform it or whether you hear them, I don't think that you should, lose points for a voiceover performance. I think what Scarlett Johansson did is no different than any other performance she's ever got given on screen. There have been times where you see Scarlett Johansson on screen and you think that is a magnificent actor. I didn't have to see her in this movie to understand she was a magnificent actor. If that was a person that wasn't Scarlett Johansson, someone I had never seen, if that was an up and comer, I would say that that is a magnificent actor. I didn't have to see the performance; I could hear it. Hearing a performance is just as strong as seeing one. And I think that it would be really, really, really cool if she had been nominated for that type of performance. I'd be about it even more. And there's that constant conversation of what should be nominated versus what shouldn't. We've heard about the motion capture work. Should an actor like Andy Serkis be nominated? And people will always argue. The people who argue against it say, "Well, no, because you can tweak their performance in post. You can do this." They come up with that argument, right? In a voiceover session, if like you don't have that same argument. You can't go in there and tweak Scarlett's performance. You just can't do it.
Right.
Like Scarlett can only give that performance. And as good as anybody else could have been in that role, no one can give the performance that Scarlett gave because that's her performance. So regardless of whether we could see it or not, I do think that a performance of that should be held in the same regard. I think that they should get that type of recognition. I thought it would have sent a great message if she would have been nominated for best supporting or best actress, however they would have gone about it. I would have loved that because again, it shows it that it's about the performance. You don't have to physically see it. That's why I love that scene where the screen goes black because we don't see either in that point. We don't see Joaquin, we don't see Scarlett Johansson. We just get in their voices, and even though we don't see it, we can visualize it, we can hear it, we can sense the emotion. So for me, I'm all for it. Do I think it's going to be something that happens relatively soon? I don't see it happening, unfortunately, but I would love if it was incorporated because then like you said, then you bring in voice act work for animated films. And well, why aren't we nominated? If I see an animated film and someone gives a brilliant performance, voiceover work, why shouldn't that be appreciated? We have voice actors that are known for doing a tremendous amount of voices and characters that never sound the same. Like why not acknowledge that? So when I watch Scarlett in this film and listen to her performance, like you said, she's so captivating that as good as everyone else is in the film, majority of the people walked away from that movie talking about Samantha. They talked about Scarlett's performance, and I think that speaks volume about what she did in that movie. So again, if you ask me, long story short, even though I was very long-winded, I'm all for that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I cheated a little bit here. I had to look up some of the most memorable voice performances, and it's all over the place. You're looking
Hmm.
at animation, you're looking
Yeah.
at puppetry,
Hmm.
practical effects, and then you're looking at where you don't even see, who's speaking. And um, you know, we have animated performances. I mean, for me, Robin Williams as Genie comes to mind. One of
Absolutely.
one of the best of all time. Where the person's not even on screen. James Earl Jones, he played Darth
Yeah.
Vader. You know,
Yeah.
that's a great performance.
Yep.
You know, we have who else? We have oh yeah, we have the person that played the voice of the demon in The Exorcist.
Yeah.
You know, so that's Mercedes McCambridge. You know, I have that here. So because that wasn't Linda Blair talking, you know, that was
Mhm.
somebody else there. We have I got to give a shout out to Kubrick. The actor that played Hal in
Hal.
2001: A Space Odyssey. That's Douglas Rain.
Yeah.
So a lot of great voice performances over the years, and um, I mean, for me, it's an easy one here. Scarlett's one of the best vocal performances of all time
It was
in
great,
all of
dude.
film.
It was
In
great.
all of
It was
film,
great.
it's so memorable.
It
So
is. It was great. And like I said, like I'm not saying another actor couldn't have done a good job, but nobody was doing what she did. Like that, it's her performance, which is why I
right,
think it's so important to give acknowledgement to those performances. Robin Williams is Genie. You can have another Genie. No one's gonna do it like Robin. No one's gonna carry it like Robin. You know, everyone's gonna have their own performance, and I think that's great. And you brought up The Exorcist. These movies rely heavily on these voice actors, on the actors that are lending their voices. They rely heavily on it, which is why I think many people, when they watched her, can appreciate the performances live on screen, but walked away going, man, that's Scarlett Johansson, though.
yeah,
Like, did you like what a performance? It's fantastic because there's so many levels in the movie. She's nurturing, she's caring, she gets angry, she gets sad, she's hopeful, she's optimistic. Like again, we're talking about human emotions. Like she played an OS, but she read it the way a real human being would be in those situations. And not everybody can do that. So I think they should be recognized for it 100%.
alrighty, folks. That was the Panel Bros official breakdown for her. If you could please give us a like, share, or subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we'd appreciate it. As always, your subscribes help our reach, and our reach will help us reach more people. As far as the comments, we would like you to leave your comments below what you thought about her. Let us know how you felt about Joaquin Phoenix. Especially let us know how you felt about Scarlett Johansson's vocal performance. Please let us know in the comments below as well. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.